जी मैम.
Okay, fine. We have 45. You have appeared for the first item today, or first item of GIT today, or not? Are you prepared for the first item of GIT? Mute, all of you mute yourself so that no sound is producing. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine. I think you have appeared for the first item today. Still, as we have not completed our lecture, so we will just go for a short review of the first item. Okay, we have started gastrointestinal physiology. What do you think? When you asked about the alimentary tract and GI tract, can you differentiate alimentary tract and GI tract? From which segment of the gastrointestinal tract will you start? If you are asked what is GI tract and what is alimentary tract?
Stomach, ma'am.
GI tract should stomach from stomach, and
Yes.
alimentary tract
From mouth.
From mouth.
from mouth. Okay, fine. And the gross anatomy of the gastrointestinal tract, the lining gulo tomader dharona ache? Do you have any idea? Okay, just have a little review on anatomy for better understanding of the nervous system actually. So the physiology, if we go through a typical cross section in the intestinal wall, then we will find the layers from outside to inside. These layers should be like this. Outer lining is called the serosa. Then তারপরে কি হবে? Muscular layer, outer longitudinal, inner circular muscle layer, then submucosa and mucosa. Because these are the cross section of the intestinal wall. If we go from outside to inside, the lining should be serosa, outer longitudinal smooth muscle layer, inner circular smooth muscle layer, then submucosa and mucosa. Clear? And you have already go through the electrical activity of the GI tract. That is the basic electrical rhythm. Do you have any idea regarding basic electrical rhythm? Just let me know.
Yes ma'am.
What is it? There are two types of actually basic electrical rhythm. When we want to explain, we explain it by two ways. One is slow wave, arekta hocche ki spike. The smooth muscles of the GI tract is almost always excited by continuous slow intrinsic electrical activity along the length of the muscle fiber. And one is slow wave and another is the spike. That I think you have already understood that the slow wave is not the actual action potential, but it produces the base for producing the action potential, that is the spikes. তাই না? এটুকু বুঝো তোমরা? Do you understand up to this? What is the resting membrane potential of the smooth muscle of GI tract? বলো কি বুঝো? Figure, from the figure, let me know. What do you understand about the resting membrane potential of the smooth muscle of GI tract?
50 millimoles.
Millimole. Minus 50 to minus 60. আমরা average বলি কত? Minus 56 millivolt. এটা হচ্ছে this is the resting membrane potential. Okay. তাহলে most of the gastrointestinal contraction occur rhythmically, and this rhythm is determined mainly by the frequency of the so-called slow waves of the smooth muscle membrane. And these slow waves are not the actual action potential. Instead, they are slow. These are the lines taken from Guyton. You have to know this description of slow waves. These are the slow undulating change in the resting membrane potential. The slow waves slow waves are the slow undulating change in the resting membrane potential, and their intensity varies from minus 5 to 15 millivolt. and their frequency ranges in different parts of the human gastrointestinal tract. And these rhythm of contraction differ from different part of the intestine, such as from stomach and duodenum and ileum. It is respectively 3 per minute, 12 per minute, and 8 to 9 per minute. And the rhythm of contraction is different in different part of the GI tract. In stomach, it is 3 per minute. In the duodenum, it is 12 per minute, and in the ileum, it is 8 to 9 per minute, respectively. Okay. And what are the cause of this slow wave? কে বলতে পারবে? এখানে একটা pacemaker cell আছে, নাম বলো তো। There is a pacemaker cell here. Who can tell me the name?
Interstitial cell.
Interstitial cell of একটা নাম আছে Yes. The cause of this slow wave is caused by the complex interactions among the smooth muscle cell and the special cell. এটাকে আমরা কি বলি জানো? Pacemaker cell of the GI tract. GI tract pacemaker cell called the interstitial cell of Castle, or the electrical pacemaker for the smooth muscle cell. And these interstitial cells form a network along with each other, and they are interposed between the smooth muscle layers with synaptic-like contact to the smooth muscle cell. And these interstitial cells of Castle undergo cyclic changes in membrane potential due to unique ion channels that periodically open and produce inward currents that may generate slow wave activity. And these slow waves usually do not themselves cause the muscle contraction in the most part of the GI tract. Instead, they mainly excite the appearance of intermittent of spike potentials, and the spike potentials in turn actually excite the muscle contraction. That is, if we want to say it in general word, by general term, we will have to understand that the resting membrane potential of the GI tract is average minus 56 millivolt. If we say it with range, then minus 50 to minus 60 millivolt. And these slow waves are not the actual action potential. Okay, they are the slow undulating change in the membrane potential and form the basis of producing the action potential. These spikes, these are the actual action potential. That is, যখন কি হবে minus 56 থেকে minus 40, when they cross the minus 40 millivolt actually, or that is either by some stimulation, when the membrane becomes more positive, that is from minus 56 to minus 40 millivolt, then actually depolarization occurs and the action potential starts, and we term it as spike potential. Are you getting my points, or I am reviewing it? তোমরা কি আমার কথা বুঝতে পারছো নাকি আমি বলে যাচ্ছি? স্টুডেন্টস, তোমরা কি আমার কথা বুঝতে পারছো নাকি আমি একাই বলে যাচ্ছি?
Yes, ma'am.
আচ্ছা, তাহলে these spike potentials are the true action potentials, and they occur automatically when the resting membrane potential of GI tract smooth muscle becomes more positive than about minus 40 millivolt. The resting membrane potential is in gap between minus 50 to minus 60 millivolt. Okay. Each time the peaks of these slow waves temporarily becomes more positive than minus 40 millivolt, the spike potential appears on these peaks, and higher the slow waves of the potential rises, the greater the frequency of the spike potential, and usually ranging between 1 to 10 spikes per second. And this spike potential lasts for 10 to 40 times as long as the gastrointestinal smooth muscle action potential, a large nerve fiber in each gastrointestinal spike lasting for 10 to 20 milliseconds. And the most important difference between the action potential of the GI tract and smooth muscle fibers is what? Can anybody tell me? The resting membrane potential of the nerve fiber is কত বলো তো?
Minus
90
minus 90 millivolt. Okay. And the depolarization in case of nerve fiber occurs due to what? Hello? Depolarization in the large nerve fiber. Which ion contributes to for the depolarization?
Sodium.
Sodium ion, by the rapid entry of the sodium ions. এটাকে তোমাকে mention, you have to mention like this, যে entry of sodium ion or influx of sodium ion is responsible for nerve fiber to produce action potential. But in case of the gastrointestinal smooth muscle, the channels responsible for action potential are the large number of calcium ions to enter along with small number of sodium ions, and therefore called the slow calcium sodium channels. Then here the depolarization is mainly responsible for the ion.
Sodium ion.
Mainly calcium.
Ion and then
Small amount of sodium ion. So that's why it is called the calcium sodium channels. And these channels are much slower to open and close than our rapid sodium channels of the nerve fiber. That's why the slowness of opening and closing of the calcium sodium channel accounts for the long duration of the action potential. And also the movement of the large amount of calcium ion to the interior of the muscle fiber during the action potential plays an important role in causing the intestinal muscle fibers to contract. Have you got my point, students?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And what about the changes in the voltage of the resting membrane potential? The baseline voltage of the smooth muscle resting membrane potential under normal condition average, we have already mentioned about minus 56 millivolt. But the multiple factors can change this level. When the potential becomes less negative, that is, we call it depolarization of the membrane. Depolarization means what? The muscle fibers becomes more excitable. But when the potential becomes more negative, that is, then the resting membrane potential, we termed it as hyperpolarization. That means the fiber becomes less excitable. তোমরা কি আমার কথা বুঝতে পারতেছো? Depolarization and hyperpolarization. Depolarization means when the nerve fiber is going more positive. That is, it is stimulating. Right? So it is exciting the muscle fiber. That is the depolarization. And hyperpolarization means beyond the resting level. That is, the nerve fiber becomes less excitable or less less excitable. The fibers becomes less excitable. What are the causes of the depolarization of the membrane in GI tract? One of the cause may be the stretching of the muscle and the stimulation of the acetylcholine released from the parasympathetic nerves, and the stimulation by several gastrointestinal hormones. The causes of excitation in nerve fiber ki holo tale bolo? All these are taken from your text. Causes of depolarization are stretching of the muscle, stimulation of acetylcholine from the parasympathetic nerve ending, and several other gastrointestinal hormones. On the other hand, hyperpolarization is due to the effect of norepinephrine or epinephrine and the stimulation of the sympathetic nerves. ঠিক আছে? তোমরা কি কথাটা বুঝতে পারছো? তাহলে এটাকে যদি আমরা সামারাইজ করি, if we summarize it, what will happen? The depolarization in case of the smooth muscle fiber is due to which ion? Bolo?
Calcium ion.
Calcium ion.
Mostly by the calcium ion and small amount of sodium. Right?
Yes,
but in case of large nerve fiber, what is which contribute for the depolarization? Which ion? Sodium ion. Rapid entry of sodium ion. And from this figure, you can actually see that this is the stimulants. The stimulants are the stress, acetylcholine, and parasympathetic. And we will learn about the sympathetic and parasympathetic stimulation from the GI tract. Actually, parasympathetic stimulation causes the GI tract emptying causes actually the emptying, and for emptying the GI tract, what things have to be done is done by the parasympathetic nerve stimulation. And on the other hand, hyperpolarization means the nerve fiber becomes more negative than the resting stage. That is, its excitation is lost, but it becomes less excitable. This is due to the contribution by the norepinephrine, okay, and sympathetic stimulation actually. Okay, তোমাদের এইটুকু সম্বন্ধে আর কোনো কোয়েশ্চেন আছে? Do you have any query regarding this issue? Any query? আছে বাচ্চারা, বলবা কিছু?
Slowly bولবা due to sodium spike due to calcium. Especially in the hand.
আচ্ছা, do you have any query regarding this issue? বলো। স্টুডেন্টস, তোমরা কি আমাকে শুনতে পাচ্ছ?
Yes,
জি
ma'am.
ম্যাম।
এখানে কোনো সমস্যা আছে?
নো ম্যাম।
Okay, তাহলে we will go for the next topic, that is the local hormones of the, আচ্ছা local hormone বলার আগে তোমরা কি আজকে লোকাল হরমোন নিউরাল অ্যাক্টিভিটি তোমরা পড়ছো না? নিউরাল কন্ট্রোল অফ the GI tract.
Yes,
Do you have any idea what is the name of the nervous system of the GI tract? GI tract has its own nerve supply. What is its termed as?
enteric nervous.
Enteric nervous system.
Enteric nervous system. So the gastrointestinal tract has its own nerve supply, termed as enteric nervous system, and it lies entirely within the gut wall, beginning from the esophagus, extending up to the anus. And the number of the neuron in this enteric nerve system is about 100 million, nearly equal to the nerve fiber of in the entire spinal cord. This highly developed enteric nervous system is especially important for controlling the GI tract movement and secretion, gastrointestinal movement and secretion. Okay,
জি ম্যাম।
and these enteric nervous this enteric nervous system is composed of mainly two plexus. Okay, outer plexus lying between the longitudinal and circular muscle layer, that is the myenteric plexus or Orbach's plexus. Okay, and the inner plexus called the submucosal plexus or Meissner's plexus, which lie within the submucosa. Teacherরা কিন্তু এটা খুব জানতে চায়. It is one of my pet questions of the teachers. Okay, যে outer plexus, that is which lie within the muscle cord, named as the myenteric plexus, and which lie within the submucosal layer, named as the Meissner's plexus. Clear?
জি ম্যাম।
Okay, the muscle layer which is lies within the muscle cord, sorry, the nerve plexus which lie within the muscle cord, তাহলে তারা কি করবে? The myenteric plexus controls mainly the gastrointestinal movements. Okay, and the submucosal plexus mainly control the gastrointestinal secretion and the local blood flow. ঠিক আছে, এটাই মনে রাখবা সব সময় যে myenteric lies within the muscle layer and they control the gastrointestinal movement. Okay, and S for Meissner's. Submucosal plexus is Meissner's plexus, and they cause the S, that is secretion, gastrointestinal secretion. মনে থাকবে?
জি ম্যাম।
Do you get my clue what I want to say? বলো তো কি বলছি? What I have mentioned regarding myenteric and Meissner's plexus? বলো।
myenteric plexus control mainly ম্যাম gastrointestinal movement, আর হচ্ছে ম্যাম submucosal plexus টা হচ্ছে ম্যাম secretion.
Secretion. তাহলে submucosal plexus lie other name কি? Meissner's plexus. SS Meissner's is prominent মনে হচ্ছে না? Meissner's plexus. আর myenteric plexus টা থাকে কোথায়? Between the muscle
Muscle
layers. Okay, and this is the entrance. তাহলে এই যে mynteric and Meissner's plexus, these are the intrinsic plexus of the কি বলো gut wall, but they are controlled or connected to the extrinsic sympathetic and parasympathetic fibers that connect to both the mynteric and Meissner's plexus. তোমরা আমার কথাটা বুঝতে পারছো? This intrinsic supply is prominent, but yet they are controlled by the extrinsic sympathetic and parasympathetic supply. বোঝা গেছে কথাটা?
Yes.
Although the enteric nervous system can function independently without the help of the extrinsic nerve fibers, but the stimulation by the parasympathetic and sympathetic can greatly enhance or inhibit the gastrointestinal function. Actually, you have not gone through the nervous system. That's why are you facing some problems regarding the sympathetic and parasympathetic?
No, ma'am.
What do you think? What is sympathetic and what is parasympathetic? বলো তো? জানো তোমরা আইডিয়া আছে?
Sympathetic is stimulatory and parasympathetic is inhibitory.
আচ্ছা শোনো, sympathetic parasympathetic it differ in different part of the body. এটুকু আপাতত মাথায় রাখো যে it is one of the autonomic supply, autonomic nerve supply. Okay, it is one of the autonomic means we do not have any control on that. ঠিক আছে, autonomic nerve supply. এবং autonomic nerve supply has two component. One is sympathetic nervous system, another is parasympathetic nervous system. Usually এটা মাথায় রাখো যে sympathetic nervous system prepares our body for emergency. Okay, and parasympathetic nervous system is actually for relaxation. হ্যাঁ, বুঝতে পারছি? এখন if you think যে you are facing an lion in front of you, what will you do? Will you stay there or run away?
run away.
Run away. Yeah. What will happen if you see a lion in front of you? Your pupils will dilate, your heart rate will increase, your respiratory rate will increase, and you will move away. All these changes within the body occurs is due to the stimulation of the sympathetic nervous system. Yeah. But parasympathetic is for relaxation. That is, when we are sleeping, a good sleep is one of the contribution by the parasympathetic. Yeah. As well as micturition and defecation. Micturition on by this time, so you already know that the micturition reflex is due to the contribution of the parasympathetic nerve, right? And in this GI tract, you will also know about the defecation reflex and contribution of the parasympathetic. That is, the evacuation from the gut is due to the contribution of the parasympathetic. তোমরা বুঝতে পারছো আমার কথাটা?
জি ম্যাম।
Parasympathetic stimulation in case of gut, what will cause? What does it cause? It will just help in intestinal motility. Parasympathetic stimulation will কি করবে বলো? Increase the intestinal motility.
Intestinal motility.
If intestinal motility occurs, what will happen? It will stimulate the whole gut and it will evacuate the gut content. তার ফলে কি হবে? We will have a কি বলবো, এটা better for if you think that when we eat, যখন আমরা খাই, খাওয়ার পরে কি হয়? Parasympathetic stimulation এর কারণে কি হবে? All the secretion of the gut wall will increase. তাহলে it will help in better digestion. Okay, and after better digestion, it help in gut motility so that the digestive end product may evacuate. That is, the defecation may occur. So I want to say that all the secretions, GI motility and evacuation is contributed by the parasympathetic nerve fiber. বুঝতে পারছি? On the other hand, sympathetic stimulation will decrease the secretion and decrease the gut motility. Understand or not?
Yes, ma'am.
শোনো, gist কথা হচ্ছে sympathetic. If you go through this figure, this is the spinal cord, okay? And sympathetic we termed as thoracolumbar outflow. T5 to L2 segment থেকে এটা preganglionic. These are the preganglionic fibers, and these are the collection of cell bodies known as ganglion. And in between the two sides of the bolbo je this is the spinal cord, and in the paravertebral gutter on each side there lies the ganglion chain of ganglion, and ganglion is nothing but the collection of the cell bodies. So the fibers which arise from the thoracic segment of the spinal cord will go through this ganglion, and the postganglionic fiber will then supply the gut wall. And these ganglions are termed as celiac ganglion, superior mesenteric ganglion, inferior mesenteric ganglion. বুঝাতে পারছি কথাটা? This is the spinal cord, okay? And from here the fiber arises. Sympathetic fiber arises from thoracic 5 to lumbar 1 segment of the spinal cord. Clear? T5 to L1 segment of the spinal cord. And all these fiber will go through the several ganglions, and then after passing the ganglion, this will termed as postganglionic fiber, okay? And this postganglionic fiber will supply the different segment of the GI tract. And this sympathetic stimulation actually decreases the gut motility and decreases the different types of secretion from different types of the gut. ঠিক আছে? Clear আছে এটুকু?
Yes, ma'am.
একজন বলতেছে yes ma'am, আর কেউ বলতেছে না কেন? বোঝা না গেলে আমাকে বলতে হবে তো, নাহলে তোমরা বুঝবে। আর প্যারাসিম্প্যাথেটিক আসছে থেকে, প্যারাসিম্প্যাথিককে আমরা বলি ক্রানিওস্যাক্রাল আউটফ্লো, ক্রানিওস্যাক্রাল আউটফ্লো, ঠিক আছে? তাহলে স্যাক্রন থেকে দেখো S234, এই যে 234 হয়ে পেলভিক নার্ভ, এরা দেখো গ্যাংলিয়নে যাওয়ার আগে এদের প্রি গ্যাংলিয়নিক ফাইবার গুলাই এত বড়, ঠিক আছে? তাহলে এরা কি করতেছে? পেলভিক নার্ভ হয়ে গাটকে সাপ্লাই দিচ্ছে। এখান থেকে এটা কি করতেছে? ক্রানিয়াম থেকে যেটা আসতেছে সেই ক্রানিয়াল আউটফ্লোটা কি হচ্ছে? ভেগাস নার্ভ হয়ে সাপ্লাই দিচ্ছে, এসোফেগাস, স্টমাক, ইন্টেস্টাইনের একটা লার্জ পোরশন, ঠিক আছে? এটা কি সাপ্লাই দিচ্ছে? ভেগাস নার্ভ। ক্লিয়ার? তাহলে আমাদের সোজা কথা এইটুকু মাথায় রাখো যে গাটের কি বলে এটার নাম, গাটের নিজস্ব নার্ভ সাপ্লাই আছে, সেটাকে আমরা বলি ইন্ট্রিনসিক সাপ্লাই। সেটার নাম হলো মাইন্টারিক প্লেক্সাস এন্ড মেইসনারস প্লেক্সাস। মাইন্টারিক প্লেক্সাসের কন্ট্রিবিউশন হচ্ছে মুভমেন্ট অফ দ্য গাট। মুভমেন্ট বলতে আমরা কি বোঝাতে পারি? ফাংশনগুলো গাইটেনে এভাবে মেনশন করা আছে: increased tonic contraction or tone of the gut, increased intestinal or rhythmical contractions, slightly increase the rate and rhythm of the contraction, and increase the velocity of conduction of the excitatory waves along the gut wall, causing more rapid movement of the gut peristaltic wave. ঠিক আছে? আর যেটা সাবমিউকাসাল প্লেক্সাস, তার কাজ কি? causes the intestinal secretion, local absorption and local contraction of the submucosal muscle that can causes various degrees of infolding of the gastrointestinal mucosa. Clear এটুকু? And this intrinsic nerve supply may be associated or may be guided by the extrinsic autonomic supply, that is parasympathetic and sympathetic. And I have already mentioned that the parasympathetic supply is from the craniosacral outflow, that is the cranial and sacral division of the nervous system. The cranial parasympathetic nerve fibers are almost entirely by the vagus nerve, and these nerve fibers provide extensive innervation to the esophagus, stomach, pancreas, and somewhat less to the intestine down to the first half of the large intestine. And the sacral parasympathetic nerve fiber originate in the S234 segment of the spinal cord, and through pelvic nerve it supplies to the distal half of the intestine all the way to the anus, and the sigmoidal, rectal and anal region are considerably better supplied with the parasympathetic fibers than by the other intestinal areas. এটুকু বুঝতে পারছো?
জি ম্যাম।
and the sympathetic supply যেটা সেটা কি thoracolumbar outflow এটাকে আমরা বলি, that is it originates in the spinal cord between the segment of the T5 to L2 segment. Most of these preganglionic fibers innervate the gut after leaving the cord and then enter the sympathetic chain that lie lateral to the spinal column, and many of these fibers then pass on through the chain to the outlying ganglia such as celiac ganglion and mesenteric ganglion. And most of these postganglionic sympathetic neuronal bodies are in these ganglion, and these postganglionic fibers then spread through the postganglionic sympathetic nerves to all part of the gut. The sympathetic innervate essentially all the gastrointestinal tract rather than being more extensive nearest to the oral cavity and anus, as is true for the parasympathetic. And there are some neurotransmitters, okay, which are secreted from the enteric neurons. These neurotransmitters are the acetylcholine, epinephrine, ATP, serotonin, dopamine, cholecystokinin, substance P, vasoactive intestinal polypeptides, somatostatin, leukoencaphalin, metenencaphalin, and bombesin. These are the neurotransmitters, chemical substances which are secreted by the nerve ending of the gastrointestinal mucosa. ঠিক আছে? Neurotransmitters are the chemical substances which are secreted by the nerve ending. তাহলে এটুকু ক্লিয়ার হয়েছে তোমাদের? এই ফিগারটা বুঝছো তো তোমরা না? তাহলে তোমরা জিআই রিফ্লেক্স গুলো you will understand if you understand this. দেখো তো, try to understand whether you can understand the GI reflexes or not. The anatomical arrangement of the enteric nervous system and its connection with the sympathetic and parasympathetic system support three types of gastrointestinal reflexes. This is one of the written question. What are the gastrointestinal reflexes? There are three types of gastrointestinal reflex. One is reflex that are entirely integrated within the gut wall, enteric nervous system. And this reflex includes those that control most of the gastrointestinal secretion, peristalsis, mixing contraction, local inhibitory effects, or so forth. বুঝতে পারছো কথাটা?
Yes, sir.
If you want to understand the GI reflexes, you have to understand the connection of the GI reflex along with the sympathetic and parasympathetic, along with the enteric nervous system itself. Okay. তাহলে ফার্স্ট রিফ্লেক্স আমরা মেনশন করলাম কোনটা, that is integrated entirely within the gut wall. Gut wall এর ভিতরেই আছে, ঠিক আছে? That is integrated within the gut wall enteric nervous system. And this reflex include that those control much of the gastrointestinal secretion, peristalsis, mixing contraction, local inhibitory effect, or so forth. এটা হলো এক নম্বর। আরেকটা যদি আমরা দেখি, আরেকটা কি, reflexes from the gut to the prevertebral sympathetic ganglion and then back again to the GI tract. বুঝতে পারছো কথাটা? একটা রিফ্লেক্স হচ্ছে শুধু এন্টারিক নার্ভাস সিস্টেমের ভিতর দিয়ে যা করা যায়, সেটা কি করতে পারবে? লোকাল সিক্রেশন করতে পারবে, পেরিস্টালসিস, মিক্সিং কন্ট্রাকশন, অল দিস ক্যান বি ডান। বুঝতে পারছো আমার কথা?
Yes, ma'am.
আচ্ছা, আর নেক্সট আমরা যেটা বললাম, 2 নাম্বারটা বললাম যে কিভাবে কন্ট্রোল হবে, যে রিফ্লেক্সটা ফ্রম গাট থেকে কোথায় যাবে, ওই যে প্রিভার্টিব্রাল যে সিম্প্যাথেটিক চেইনটা দেখালাম, গ্যাংলিয়া গুলো দেখালাম না, সেখানে যাবে। তাহলে রিফ্লেক্সেস ফ্রম দ্য গাট টু দ্যাট প্রিভার্টিব্রাল সিম্প্যাথেটিক গ্যাংলিয়া and then again back to the gut. সেটা কি করবে? This reflex transmits signals long distances to other areas of the GI tract, such as signals from the stomach to cause the evacuation of the colon, termed as the gastrocolic reflex. তোমরা খেয়াল করবা যে যখন after taking food someone moves to the toilet to evacuate, তাই না? তার মানে কি, যে স্টমাকে ফুড এন্ট্রি হলো এবং সেটা সিগন্যাল পাঠালো কোলনকে এমটি করার জন্য, তাই না? তাহলে এটাকে আমরা কি বললাম? গ্যাস্ট্রোকোলিক রিফ্লেক্স। কিভাবে হলো এটা? যে স্টমাকের ওয়ালে যে নার্ভ ফাইবার আছে সেটা কি করলো, সেখান থেকে অ্যাপারেন্ট নার্ভ ফাইবার কোথায় গেল? প্রিভার্টিব্রাল যে সিম্প্যাথেটিক গ্যাংলিয়া আছে সেখানে কি সে কি খবর পাঠালো? সেন্ড ইম্পালস যে this stomach is contained with food, then the impulse again come back to the gut wall and causes the colonic contraction to evacuate the colon. আমি বোঝাতে পারছি কথাটা?
জি ম্যাম।
Yes, ma'am.
শুধু দুইজন বুঝছো তাই না? Out of 86, only 2 of you have understood what I have said. Okay. Then another example is signals from the colon and small intestine to inhibit the stomach motility and secretion. That is the enterogastric reflex. তার মানে কোলন থেকেও সিগন্যাল পাঠানো সম্ভব to the small intestine to inhibit the stomach motility and stomach secretion, and reflexes from the colon to inhibit the emptying of the ileal content to the colon. That is the colono-ileal reflex. Example গুলো কিন্তু লাগবে. When you mention the broad heading, you have to also mention the example of this. Okay. And last one is the reflexes from the gut to the spinal cord itself or brainstem, and then again back to the GI tract. এটার ভিতরে কি পড়বে? These examples are reflexes from the stomach and duodenum to the brainstem, and then back again to the stomach by way of vagus nerve to control the gastric motor and secretory activity. On the other hand, pain reflexes that causes general inhibition of the entire GI tract, and the defecation reflexes that travel from the colon and rectum to the spinal cord, and then again back to produce powerful colonic, rectal, and abdominal contraction required for defecation. তোমরা কি আমার কথাটা বুঝতে পারছো বাচ্চারা?
Yes, ma'am.
জি ম্যাম।
তাহলে gastrointestinal reflex is of 3 types. Under 3 broad heading, you have to give different examples of these different type of GI reflexes. Okay. This anatomical arrangement of the enteric nervous system and its connection with sympathetic and parasympathetic system supports 3 types of reflex. One reflex which is integrated within the enteric nervous system. Aita reflex আমরা বললাম from the gut to the prevertebral sympathetic ganglia, and then again back to the GI tract. And the last one, from gut to the spinal cord or brainstem, and then again back to the GI tract. Is it clear to all?
Yes, ma'am.
And so
Yes, ma'am.
if the question, the GI reflexes comes, then you have to describe it under broad heading along with examples. Okay.
ওকে ম্যাম।
You have another 10 minutes. If you are disconnected, you will join again with the same link for 10 minutes. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now we will go through the local hormones of GI tract.